Princess Rose stared at the holographic message floating before her, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. The translation couldn't be right. She read it again, her third set of fingers tapping nervously against the crystal desk in her private chambers aboard the royal starship. By order of the High Council of the Star Alliance, Princess Rose of the Crystal Empire is hereby notified of her arranged marriage to a human? She stood up so quickly her chair clattered to the floor. Humans were the newest members of the Star Alliance, a species that had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. They were considered primitive by most of the advanced races, known more for their unpredictability than their technological achievements. "Mother!" Rose called out, her voice echoing through the crystalline corridors. "There must be a mistake." Queen Aurora swept into the room moments later, her crystalline crown catching the light of the nearby star they were passing. "What mistake, dear one?" Rose thrust the hologram toward her mother. "This. It says I'm to marry a human. That's impossible. I'm supposed to marry Prince Swift of the Nebula Kingdom. We've been promised to each other since we were children." The Queen's expression shifted from confusion to shock as she read the message. This is an official decree. But how? The arrangements with the Nebula Kingdom were finalized just last cycle. Well, unfinalize it, Rose demanded, her natural bioluminescence flaring with emotion, causing her skin to pulse with waves of blue light. "I won't marry some human. It's not that simple," Queen Aurora said, her own luminescence dimming with worry. "This bears the mark of the High Council itself. Breaking such a decree could destabilize our entire empire's standing in the Alliance." Rose collapsed onto her bed, her crystalline decorations tinkling as she fell. "But why? Why would the High Council suddenly decide this?" The Queen activated her personal communication device, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "I'm scheduling an emergency meeting with the Council. There must be an explanation." "And if there isn't?" Rose asked, her voice small. "Then, my dear," the Queen said carefully, "we may have to consider that this is not a mistake at all, but rather, politics at play." Rose's antennae drooped. "Politics? But what could the humans possibly offer that would make the Council override an established royal engagement?" Before the Queen could respond, another message flashed across the room's main display. Rose's heart nearly stopped as she read it. "Arrival at Earth scheduled in 48 standard hours. Prepare for diplomatic reception and marriage ceremony." 2 days? Rose exclaimed, her luminescence now pulsing an alarming shade of red. "They can't be serious." The Queen's expression hardened with determination. "Pack your things, Rose. We're going to get to the bottom of this. And if we must meet these humans," she straightened her crown, "we'll show them exactly what it means to trifle with the Crystal Empire." As Rose began gathering her belongings, her mind raced with questions. Who was this human she was suddenly supposed to marry? Why had the Council arranged this? And most importantly, how could she get out of it? Little did she know, on the blue planet ahead of them, a young human was about to receive an equally shocking message of their own. Marcus Anderson was having a perfectly normal day at the Global Space Defense Force headquarters until armed guards burst into his office. He looked up from his computer, where he'd been analyzing deep space signals, a job he'd done quietly for the past 3 years. "Lieutenant Anderson?" One of the guards stepped forward. "You need to come with us immediately." "What's this about?" Marcus asked, rising slowly from his chair. He'd never broken any rules, unless you counted sneaking extra coffee from the break room. "Classified. Top level." The guard's expression was unreadable. "The General wants to see you personally." 10 minutes later, Marcus found himself in General Thompson's office, a room he'd only seen in passing. The General was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and more medals than Marcus could count. "Sit down, Lieutenant," she said, not looking up from her tablet. "How much do you know about the Crystal Empire?" Marcus blinked. "The alien civilization that joined the Star Alliance last year? Not much beyond the basics. They're silicon-based life forms, known for their advanced quantum technology and—" He paused. "Why?" The General finally looked up. Because in approximately 46 hours, you're going to marry their princess. Marcus laughed. Then he noticed nobody else was laughing. You're joking, right? The Star Alliance High Council has selected you as the ideal candidate for an arranged marriage with Princess Rose of the Crystal Empire. The general slid a document across her desk. This is not a request, Lieutenant. This is a direct order. But why me? Marcus stared at the document, which was covered in both English and strange crystalline symbols. Your psychological profile, your work in deep space communications, and most importantly, your genetic makeup. The general's voice softened slightly. You're compatible with their species, Anderson. Do you understand how rare that is? Marcus felt the room spinning. Compatible? For what? The Crystal Empire's royal line is dying out. Their genetic diversity is critically low. They need new DNA, human DNA, to survive. Your specific genetic markers make you an ideal candidate for producing viable offspring with their species. Offspring? Marcus nearly choked on the word. General, I can't. I mean, I don't even know how to talk to regular human women, let alone an alien princess. This isn't about romance, Lieutenant. This is about preventing an entire civilization from going extinct and maintaining humanity's standing in the Star Alliance. The general stood up. A team will arrive shortly to brief you on Crystal Empire customs and protocol. You have until the royal ship arrives to learn everything you need to know. Marcus slumped in his chair. And if I refuse? Then we lose our quantum technology trade agreements, our position in the Alliance weakens, and the Crystal Empire eventually dies out. The general's voice was firm. The fate of two civilizations rests on this marriage, Anderson. I suggest you start reading. As if on cue, a group of cultural advisors entered the office, their arms full of datapads and holographic projectors. Looking at the material they began setting up, Marcus saw images of a beautiful crystalline city, and then, his future bride. Princess Rose's image rotated in the hologram, her silvery skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns, her elegant features both alien and somehow captivating. Well, he muttered to himself, at least she's pretty. Even if she probably wants to kill me right now. He had no idea how right he was about that last part. The royal starship's crystal engines hummed as it approached Earth's orbit. Princess Rose paced in her chambers, her footsteps creating musical chimes against the resonant floor. She'd spent the last day reviewing everything known about humans, and each new piece of information only increased her anxiety. They're so fragile, she muttered, watching a holographic display of human anatomy. No backup organs, no crystalline reinforcement, not even basic bioluminescent communication capabilities. She waved her hand through the display in frustration, scattering the light particles. The door chimed, and Queen Aurora entered. The council finally responded to our inquiry. Rose spun around, hope flickering across her luminescent skin. And? They're standing firm. The Queen's own light patterns dimmed with resignation. They say this match is essential for both our peoples. The human's genetic structure is uniquely compatible with our crystalline biology. Without new genetic material, our people will begin to fracture within 3 generations. So they're using me as a breeding program? Rose's patterns flashed angry red. What about my feelings? What about Prince Swift? Prince Swift. The Queen hesitated. The medical scans came back. He's carrying the same genetic markers that are causing our population's decline. Any children you had with him would shatter before reaching maturity. Rose sank onto her bed, her anger fading to a dull blue sorrow. You knew? All this time? We hoped to find a solution. The Queen sat beside her daughter. But time is running out. This human, this Marcus Anderson, his DNA could save our entire species. Meanwhile, on Earth, Marcus was struggling through his crash course in Crystal Empire etiquette. He sat in a secured facility, surrounded by cultural experts and diplomatic advisors. No, no, and no. His etiquette instructor, Dr. Reed, threw up her hands. You can't bow that deeply to a Crystal Empire royal. Their gravitational sensors will interpret it as submission, And you'll be considered a servant rather than a consort. Marcus straightened up, his head spinning. Sorry. It's just, there are so many rules. Don't look directly at their core light, don't touch their left antenna, don't eat anything blue because it's considered royal property. And you'll need to master all of it before they arrive in 18 hours. Dr. Reed reminded him. The future of human crystal relations depends on it. No pressure, Marcus mumbled, reaching for his 7th cup of coffee. He glanced at the hologram of Princess Rose again. Despite her alien features, there was something captivating about the way her light patterns danced across her silvery skin. According to the briefing, those patterns were a form of emotional expression, as natural to her people as facial expressions were to humans. At least tell me there's a procedure for the first meeting, he said hopefully. Dr. Reed nodded. The princess will approach from the east, following the rising sun. You'll stand at the western point of the crystal landing platform. The symbolism is important, her light meeting your shadow, the joining of two different natures. And then you'll either make history, Dr. Reed said with a small smile, or cause an interstellar diplomatic crisis. No pressure. Back on the starship, Rose was receiving similar instructions from her royal protocol master. The human will seem dull to you, the ancient advisor warned. They do not shine, they do not resonate. But you must not show disgust. They are differently luminous. Rose raised an eyebrow. Differently luminous? They have their own kind of light. Internal, rather than external. The Council believes this is why they might be compatible with us. Their light complements our light, rather than competing with it. As Earth grew larger in the ship's viewing crystal, Rose touched her own softly glowing skin. Could she really bind herself to someone who couldn't even share the most basic form of her people's communication? Someone who couldn't glow with joy or dim with sorrow? 12 hours until atmospheric entry, announced the ship's crystal core. In 2 different worlds, 2 very different beings prepared to meet their fate. Neither knew that their first meeting would go nothing like anyone had planned. Everything was going perfectly until Earth's magnetic field interfered with the Royal Starship's landing systems. Rose clutched her seat as the massive vessel shuddered, its crystal matrix humming in distress. Minor fluctuation, the navigator announced, though his rapidly shifting color patterns suggested otherwise. The human's electromagnetic communications are more robust than anticipated. Queen Aurora's fingers danced across the control crystal. Adjust our resonance frequencies. We can't have a diplomatic incident before we even land. On the ground, Marcus and the welcoming committee watched in horror as the crystalline ship wobbled in its descent. The carefully constructed landing platform, built to exact Crystal Empire specifications, sparkled in the morning sun, waiting for a ship that suddenly seemed unable to reach it. Should we do something? Marcus asked, breaking protocol by speaking before being spoken to. Dr. Reed shot him a withering look but said nothing, her own worry evident. General Thompson spoke quietly into her communication device. Get our stabilization beams ready. If that ship breaks apart in our atmosphere, we're looking at an interstellar incident. Inside the ship, Rose had had enough. She rushed to the bridge, her ceremonial crystals chiming with each step. The human communication frequencies, they're not interference, they're an invitation. The navigator looked confused. Princess? They're radio waves, they're satellite signals. They're not random noise, they're a pattern. Her recent studies of human technology suddenly proved useful. They're trying to help guide us in, but our systems are fighting against them instead of harmonizing. Queen Aurora's eyes widened. Can you prove this? Rose's fingers flew across the nearest crystal console. Look at the wave patterns. If we adjust our ship's resonance to match their broadcast frequencies instead of trying to block them. The ship's hum changed pitch, and suddenly the shaking stopped. The vessel glided smoothly downward, guided by the very electromagnetic fields that had been disrupting it moments before. On the ground, Marcus watched in amazement as the ship stabilized itself, its crystal surface now pulsing in perfect rhythm with Earth's own communication networks. It was beautiful, like a giant jewel catching every frequency in the air and turning it into light. The ship landed with perfect precision on the platform, though not from the ceremonial eastern approach as planned. Instead, it had come from the north, completely ruining the carefully choreographed symbolism of the first meeting. Dr. Reed looked like she might faint. The ceremony, the symbolism, it's all wrong! But Marcus wasn't listening. Through the ship's translucent hull, he could see movement, and then, light. The most beautiful patterns of light he'd ever witnessed, shifting and swirling in what he somehow knew was the expression of triumph and relief. The main crystal portal of the ship dissolved, revealing Princess Rose standing at the threshold. She had ignored the ceremonial processional, rushing to see what her quick thinking had accomplished. Her skin glowed with victory and excitement, patterns that needed no translation. Their eyes met across the platform. Rose saw not the dull, lightless creature she'd feared, but a human whose eyes seemed to sparkle with their own kind of inner luminescence. Marcus saw not an alien princess, but a brilliant being who just saved her own ship using human technology that his own work had helped develop. They stood there, protocol forgotten, just staring at each other until Queen Aurora cleared her throat. "Well," she said, her own pattern showing amusement, "it seems the joining of shadow and light will have to wait. My daughter has already demonstrated a rather impressive joining of our technologies instead." General Thompson stepped forward, also hiding a smile. "Perhaps we should skip the ceremonial greetings and move straight to the technical and cultural exchange discussions?" Marcus found his voice first. "I'd like to hear how she figured out our communication patterns." Rose's colors shifted to a softer, curious glow. "I'd like to know how you humans managed to create such complex resonance patterns without any crystalline technology." Their first words to each other might not have followed the script, but they were exactly right. Sometimes the best diplomatic relations start with broken protocols and shared curiosity. Neither of them noticed their respective advisors having quiet panic attacks in the background. The diplomatic reception had been transformed into an impromptu technical conference. Rose and Marcus sat in the Earth facility's main conference room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the integration of human and crystal technologies. Their respective advisors had given up trying to maintain protocol and now watched in amazement as the two potential spouses excitedly shared their knowledge. "So your deep space signals," Rose said, her patterns shifting in fascinating ways as she worked through the concept. "They're not just communication. They're also navigation beacons?" Marcus nodded, trying not to stare too obviously at her luminescence. "We learned early on that radio waves could do more than carry messages. They can map space, detect objects, guide ships. Just like our crystal resonance." Rose's excitement made her glow brighter. "We use crystalline harmonics for the same purposes. Different methods, same principles." Queen Aurora watched from nearby, her own patterns showing thoughtful consideration. She leaned toward General Thompson. "They seem to be getting along better than expected." "Indeed," the general replied. "Though we still haven't addressed the main issue." As if on cue, a priority message chimed from both human and crystal communication systems. The High Council was demanding an update on the marriage arrangements. The room fell silent. Rose's glow dimmed noticeably, and Marcus's enthusiasm faded. They'd been so caught up in sharing their technological insights, they'd almost forgotten why they were really here. "Right," Marcus said quietly. "The marriage." Rose's patterns shifted to a more formal configuration. "Yes. The arrangement." Queen Aurora stepped forward. "The council requires an answer. Will you proceed with the ceremony?" Before either could respond, Prince Swift's image suddenly appeared on all displays, his crystal form radiating anger. "I object to this arrangement. Princess Rose was promised to me." Rose's patterns flashed with surprise. "Swift? How did you? Did you think I wouldn't fight for you?" The prince's image flickered. "I've discovered something about this human's genetic compatibility. It's not what the council claims." Marcus felt all eyes turn to him. "What?" "But the tests were manipulated," Swift declared. "I've traced the data. Someone on the council altered the results. This human's DNA isn't special. It's actually dangerous to crystal biology. Rose's pattern showed alarm. What? Think about it. Swift continued. Why rush this arrangement? Why choose a random human officer? It's because... His transmission suddenly cut off. The room erupted in chaos. Crystal advisors began rapid pattern discussions while human officials demanded access to the genetic data. In the confusion, Rose slipped away to a quiet corner, her patterns a turbulent mix of emotions. Marcus followed her, keeping a respectful distance. I swear, I didn't know anything about this. I believe you, Rose said softly. You're many things, Marcus, but not a deceiver. Your reactions are too luminous. What do you mean? She turned to face him. My people use light patterns to communicate emotion, but we can also hide our true feelings behind formal patterns. Humans, your emotions show in subtle ways you can't control. Micro-expressions, pulse rates, pupil dilation. I've been studying you, just as you've been studying my patterns. Marcus blushed, confirming her observation. That obvious, huh? Wonderfully so. Her patterns shifted to something more personal. Which is why I know Swift is wrong about you. But he might be right about the council. The question is, why? Why would they want to pair us if it's actually dangerous? Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. On every screen, urgent messages flashed. Massive crystal ships were appearing in Earth's orbit. Ships that didn't belong to either the Crystal Empire or Earth's fleet. No, Rose whispered, her patterns showing pure dread. The Obsidian Collective. They're not supposed to be in this sector. Marcus reached for her hand without thinking, surprised to find it warm despite its crystalline appearance. Who are they? The reason the council was in such a hurry. Rose realized, her patterns shifting to show determination. They weren't trying to save my people's genetics. They were trying to seal an alliance before the collective arrived. They looked at each other, understanding dawning. They weren't just two people being forced into an arranged marriage anymore. They were the only ones who might be able to save both their worlds from what was coming. Well, Marcus said, still holding her hand, I guess we have a real reason to work together now. The Obsidian Collective's ships loomed in Earth's orbit like black diamonds, their dark crystalline surfaces absorbing all light. In the command center, humans and Crystal Empire officials worked frantically to coordinate their defenses. Their ships are absorbing our sensor waves, a human officer reported. And they're dampening our crystal resonance, added a Crystal Empire navigator, her patterns showing distress. Rose and Marcus stood before a combined display of their technologies, their earlier discoveries giving them an idea. What if, Rose said, her patterns shifting with rapid thoughts, we don't try to penetrate their ships? What if we blind them instead? Marcus caught on immediately. Earth's communication network, combined with our crystal resonance, could create an overload of signal and light. They finished together. Queen Aurora's patterns showed concern. The power requirements would be enormous. We'd need both fleets working in perfect harmony. Then it's a good thing, Marcus said with a smile, that we have someone who understands both technologies. Rose's patterns rippled with determination. We'll need to modify Earth's satellite network to synchronize with our crystal matrices. I can help with that, came a familiar voice. Prince Swift's image appeared again, this time with supporting data. I'm sending you the real genetic analysis I discovered. The council didn't lie about the compatibility, they just didn't tell us why it mattered. The data showed something remarkable. Human DNA and crystal matrices could form a unique resonance pattern when properly aligned. It wasn't about breeding at all, it was about creating a new form of technological symbiosis. They needed us to figure this out ourselves. Rose realized, her patterns showing wonder. A forced solution wouldn't work. The resonance has to be natural, Marcus finished. Like how we worked together to land your ship. They quickly got to work, Rose interfacing with the crystal ships while Marcus coordinated Earth's satellite network. Their combined knowledge created something entirely new, a hybrid system that neither civilization could have developed alone. The obsidian ships drew closer, their black surfaces seeming to devour the stars themselves. "They're charging weapons," General Thompson announced grimly. "Now!" Rose and Marcus commanded together. Every human satellite and crystal ship activated simultaneously. Earth's electromagnetic spectrum lit up with countless frequencies, while the Crystal Empire vessels pulsed with harmonious resonance. The two patterns intertwined, amplifying each other. The effect was spectacular. The combined energy created a dazzling display of light and signal that rippled through space. The obsidian ships, designed to absorb and dampen individual frequencies, were overwhelmed by the synchronized assault on every frequency at once. Their black surfaces began to crack, light pouring from the fissures. Within minutes, the mighty collective fleet was forced to retreat, their absorption technology rendered useless against the unified defense. As cheers erupted in the command center, Rose turned to Marcus, her pattern showing joy and something more. "You know, for someone who doesn't glow, you've brought more light to my life than anyone." Marcus grinned. "And for someone made of crystal, you've got more warmth than any human I've known." Queen Aurora stepped forward, her pattern showing royal authority. "The Council's matchmaking, while questionable in method, was correct in principle. Our peoples are stronger together, not just in marriage, but in true partnership." "Speaking of marriage," Marcus said, taking Rose's hand, "I know we're supposed to do this for political reasons, but would you consider doing it for personal ones instead?" Rose's pattern shifted to colors no one had seen before, ones that made the Crystal Empire officials gasp and blush. "I thought you'd never ask," she said, her glow brightening the entire room. "Though we should probably figure out how to combine a human wedding with a crystal bonding ceremony." "I have some ideas about that," Marcus said, pulling her close. "Something about the harmony of light and shadow." Their kiss created a new pattern of light that would be studied by both civilizations for generations to come, proof that sometimes the best diplomatic solutions come from the heart, even if one heart glows and the other merely beats. The Obsidian Collective never returned to that sector of space. They had learned what the Council had known all along: never underestimate the power of two civilizations united by love rather than fear.